Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Good evening. If you're located in New York,
Or
as
the
we
East
are.
Coast.
Yep, we're the East Coast.
We're calling in from Sunnyside, Queens, New York.
All right, we're gonna get started. So let's share the screen here. Share this one. All right. Okay. So welcome. So we're gonna do a little bit of a speed build on the panel today. So let's kick it off. Here we go.
So we'll start with introductions.
Yes, my name is Dhemerae. I've been cosplaying since 2014, I believe. Avid cosplayer. I also work professionally in the 3D printing industry. So I've been 3D printing for as long as I've been cosplaying, actually a little bit longer. And I'm pretty excited to be here. So this is cool. Passionate about lots of things: anime, manga, cartoons,
science fiction,
all sorts of stuff.
80s music.
80s music, yes, absolutely. Hopefully you share some of those passions as well. All right.
Thanks, Dhemerae. And hi, everyone. My name's Sarah. I've been cosplaying a little longer than Dhemerae.
Quite a bit longer, than me.
And been 3D printing as long as Dhemerae, since 2012. That's actually how we met. We met in art school in a digital arts class where we learned all about 3D printing and collaborated, and now we make all of these crazy things. I am passionate about anime and dance and fitness. I'm also a Pilates instructor. So we have a lot of eclectic interests that we bring to our collective known as the Laser Girls. So when we combine our forces and our Buster swords, you get the Laser Girls. So what is the Laser Girls? It's not just the two of, it's just the two of us.
Yes.
But we are focused on 3D printing education and 3D printing, we like to say evangelists. We teach classes. We also sell products, and we create content on Twitch, on our website.
Yep.
We do a lot of different types of things under the umbrella of our love and passion for 3D printing and creating absurd things.
Absolutely.
Straight out of the computer.
And most importantly, we also cosplay. So we're pretty sad that we couldn't participate in New York Comic Con this year, which we've done every year since we started the Laser Girls together. And so, it was important for us to have this kind of event because we get to sort of share our passions like we normally get to do in person with everyone in New York. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about 3D printing. We're going to not spend too much time on this because I'm sure most people here are familiar with 3D printing. We've talked about it ad nauseum. We know everything there is to know now. But let's talk a little bit about why you would choose 3D printing as a method for creating your costumes.
Because there's a lot of different ways to cosplay.
Yes.
And there's no correct way.
No, all ways are valid and amazing and acceptable. So let's talk, we're just going to talk a little bit about specifics. And we're not going to spend too much time on this because we want to get to modeling. So, all right. So the first couple things we're going to talk about are about scanning. If people are not really as familiar with 3D scanning, it's a method of capturing an object in the real world and bringing it into a digital space so that you can manipulate it. If you're familiar with like MRIs, CAT scans, that's a similar process. It uses different types of technology, but it's the same kind of idea. Now, what's great about 3D scanning is it's becoming widely more available to do. There's phone apps that can do 3D scanning now. So as long as you have access to a smartphone with a camera, if you can download that app, you are able to create a 3D scan. So you can do 3D scans of your face or various body parts, which you can then bring into your 3D software to create objects that fit to your body, to your specifications.
And any cosplayer knows that fit is, in many cases, the biggest challenge, especially when you're working with certain types of materials that maybe you're not as malleable as you would like.
Such as most 3D printed plastics.
Exactly. So customization being so important to the cosplay making process, 3D printing and working digitally, it's just a beautiful marriage to
Yes,
to
absolutely.
really bring that to a whole other level and make that more malleable than maybe other processes will allow.
Yeah, and so on top of scanning, obviously designing in a digital space, designing your 3D objects to then be printed. You know, huge obvious perks are precision. You can be highly accurate in a 3D design program, and reproducibility. You can remake the object once you've made it once, which is kind of amazing. So if props break all the time, we've broken many a prop at a convention. All it takes is, you know, one little too rambunctious of an arm swing, and then your part hits a wall, and then it goes flying and it shatters into a billion pieces. So, but what's great is that you can reprint it. You can reprint it. You can often also iterate on your design to make it stronger. You know, maybe when you wore it at a con, you realize that the handle was a little loose and you want to be a little tighter. All you do is just, you know, tweak it a little bit.
That's something we do all the time.
Yes.
Dhemerae is really the queen of rebuilding all of her cosplays multiple times.
I love doing it.
Yeah, after taking it around the convention circuit that we do every year, she really likes to sit down and evaluate what could make this better. And she's able to do that because she has the file.
Right. And I'm not going to say how old I am, but I will say that I'm at an age where the most important thing for me for cosplay is being comfortable. I'm tired of being in pain, and I'm tired of fussing with my costume. And so my goals now are not only to be able to create like amazing props, because I always want to do that, or amazing costumes, but I want them to be comfortable and easy to wear, easy to take off, easy to put on. So a lot of my focus now is building props that are easy to use.
Space is the next one. And depending on where you live, this can be the biggest hindrance to your making process.
Right.
We live in a 1-bedroom apartment in the city. So we've been working in tight spaces for a very long time. And we were in art school, so we were working in dorms, trying to paint in dorms and do all kinds of crazy things. So space is something that we don't have the luxury of having. And this process is perfect for small spaces or any space. All you need is your computer on a surface, or you can even sit on the floor.
A computer and a printer, or access to a printer. So yeah, that's what's really great. You can design on a laptop. You can design on a tablet now. There's programs that work for tablets and phones. So you don't need to have a super high-end laptop. Some programs, all you need is access to the internet. So that's all you need in order to be able to design something. So that's amazing. So, you know, it's actually really easy now to get into 3D design on, you know, a low budget, which is great, when that used to not be the case, you know, a few years ago.
And on a positive note, our lack of space has, I think, made us better designers and better practitioners in the software that we use.
Yes.
I can definitely say from 4 years ago, when we were first kind of starting our cosplay journeys together as the Laser Girls, we build completely differently now.
Yes.
And a lot of that is space influenced.
Space influenced, and also we want to try to reduce the amount of waste that we produce when we're making our costumes. And 3D printing actually is a way to reduce that waste. Other positive notes on why, we talked a little about iteration and the learning curve. There is a learning curve, as with learning any skill, any practical physical skill. There is a learning curve to software, but that learning curve is shrinking, which is great. Again, software is becoming so advanced that it's becoming much easier for beginners to just hop on it and start making their first costumes. So we'll keep moving on, and we're going to go through this a little quickly, but material pros and of obviously using 3D printing for costumes. Material durability. You'll find that plastics are more durable than foam in terms of its lifespan. But, you know, there's other perks too. You can get really high resolution detail, as you can see in Thor's hammer. There's a really high resolution cap there.
And what I love about this image is that Dhemerae built this hammer using a variety of materials. So she's got nylon plastic, she's got PLA, she's got HD resin. So you've really got you've got a menu of options to pick from, and you can adjust your materials based on what you need your piece to either look like or function.
Absolutely.
So I really like this image because I think it really shows like the exciting possibilities of materials.
Absolutely. And you may be asking yourself why Thor's hammer was 3D printed. This design for me was I wanted to make a flat pack 3D hammer. So basically I wanted to make a hammer I could just take apart and store flat, or as flat as possible. So this hammer actually comes apart and is stored flat for size constraints. Again, living in this apartment.
Thor, the entirety of the Thor costume is in a box under our bed.
It sure is,
and it all fits in there.
Yeah.
But and a lot of that is due to your flat packing designs.
All right, so material options. There's there's so many types of materials you can print in now. Many composite thermoplastics that are awesome. And you'll see a lot of them are called like Rhino or Duris, or, you know, they have their own kind of names to them now, but they're usually just composite materials. So the most common ones are highlighted in orange on this slide. So the most common plastics you'll run into, PLA, ABS, ASA, nylon, PETG, TPU. There's many, many, many more. But also you may run into some UV resins if you want to do some high resolution, resin printing. Metals, of course, you can 3D print in metal now, which is all very exciting. And metals are becoming more accessible through companies like Shapeways, which is a local company here in Long Island City, which is like right next to us. Ceramics and glass, this is kind of a newer thing. I forgot her name. Who makes these beautiful pieces?
Oh my gosh, as soon as you said
I know, as soon as I said
her name vanished.
Darn it. And she's got an ecology exhibition right now at the MoMA.
Okay.
Neri Oxman. I'm so sorry.
Neri Oxman, yes.
If you're interested in like the most advanced 3D printing plastics that's happening right now, Neri Oxman is the artist to look at. She makes incredible work with the help of the MIT Media Lab and with a direct partnership with Stratasys, which is a 3D printing company. But yeah, the bottom two pictures, those are Neri Oxman prints. You have plastics, multicolor plastics, and then you also have glass. And she actually developed a way of printing glass. So that's becoming kind of a thing. Carbon fiber infused plastics is a thing. And then skin and organs, which is something which is new. It's not, we're not quite there yet, but it's happening, which is great.
We're not making cosplay out of skin.
We're not going to be making cosplay out of skin. No, not yet. But maybe, who knows? But yes. So, and then the upper two, you see TPU on the left, and then a metal chain actually printed, which is really cool on the upper right.
Building chainmail using 3D printing from experience. It's so satisfying.
It's great. It's so great. And I highly recommend printing chainmail, 3D printing chainmail for sure. Types of printing, again, the most common you'll run into, DLP and FFF, which stands for fused filament fabrication. That's your standard maker bots and your standard filament extruders.
Try saying that 10 times fast.
FFF. Filament fabrication. Yeah. And then there's a bunch of other ones that, you can look them up. They all use they're all different technologies. You can see the GIF or the GIF that's up at the top is a DLP printer. And the bottom is a DMLS, which is a direct metal laser sintering printer, which is cool. Shows you how metal printing is working. So, all right, let's keep going. So that was that. So we're going to do a little bit of a kind of a live demo. Basically, normally when we do this panel, what we do is we will have a live sculpting session. So one of us will be sculpting live an object that we pre-picked. But this time, because of time constraints, we've had them pre-recorded. We've worked on them this week, and then we're going to kind of do a live chat along or a dub basically over what we're working on. So these are all costumes that we are actively working on or have worked on in the past that we kind of redid. So let's talk about this. There we go. Okay, so we want to have a little bit of an audience participation here. So we have 3 objects that we could be working on. So you let us know which ones you want to see us make. So we have the Flame Liberator from Axel, which is from a video game called Kingdom Hearts. Actually, these are all video games. We love video games.
So we really tried our best to diversify, but we're huge Final Fantasy fans.
Yes.
And RPG fans, and
these are all JRPGs.
We didn't diversify as much as we thought. Geez. Now that we're looking at it.
Anyway, all right. So sorry about that if you're not a big JRPG fan as much as we are. But we have a Keyblade. We have in the middle, we have a skull mask from
Persona 5.
And then of course we have Buster Sword from Cloud Strife from 7. So what we're going to do is go ahead in the YouTube chat. Let us know which one you want. You can either put 1, 2, or 3 going from left to right.
Yeah, so 1 is Axel, 2 is Ryuji, and 3 is Cloud.
And then anyone on Zoom can go ahead and put their number in the Q&A or
put it in the Q&A.
Yeah. And then we'll take a look at that.
So cast your votes. And then we'll show we pre-recorded some video going through the process of this just for time constraints. All right. We've got some votes. So 1 is Axel, the Keyblade, 2 is Ryuji, the mask, and 3 is Buster Sword, Cloud from 7. Did everyone play the 7 remake?
The 7 remake was excellent. We could do an entire panel on just talking about 7. So we got another vote for 2. All right, it looks like number 2.
Number 2 is taking the lead.
Hold on one second. We're just gonna check the chat. All right. Yeah. All right. So it looks like 2 has kind of swept the field. So we're gonna
2 is sweeping. This is your last call, everyone.
Last call, skull mask. All right. People want a skull mask. So this is great because it's actually October. It's the spookiest month of the year. So we're gonna go ahead and do something spooky.
All right. So the votes are in. We will be showing my best boy, Ryuji's mask from Persona 5. Woohoo!
All right. So a couple things before you begin the design process for 3D modeling, for printing, for costumes. You want to think about scale. You want to think about construction, how it's going to be made. You want to think about materials. Will you be using multiple materials? And then you want to also be thinking about post-production. And believe it or not, all of these do impact the actual design process of the prop that you're making.
Making anything for 3D printing cosplay, I always describe it as a chess game. You really kind of have to know your end game before you even begin. And that can be difficult because there's so many different things that can happen. And the process is ironically quite malleable to a degree. But having a good idea of, how you're going to be wearing it, the time of year that you're going to be wearing it, all of these things can affect how you build the thing. Design intent is huge when you're making wearables.
Yep.
And
as we've learned from trial and error.
Yeah.
So
really thinking about all of the external and internal, digital and non-digital elements that can affect how this thing gets built. Sounds really intimidating, but I think is really exciting, at least for us.
No, because I mean, again, you learn all this through doing. And that's what's kind of great about 3D printing is you can iterate so fast.
Just make stuff.
Like small errors you don't think about, like, oh, I needed to put a hole in here for straps, or oh, I didn't even think about how these two were going to be glued together and stay while they're drying. I didn't, like, those are things that you realize after the fact, and then you just iterate and do it again.
This whole thing weighs 20 pounds now that it's printed.
That is something that you don't learn, unfortunately, until you're all done, which is something I learned, which again is a great story. But the first time we ever printed our Buster Swords for Comic-Con, they were about 15 pounds. And that was a terrible idea because they were printed in resin.
Our right arms were very strong.
And they weren't solid. We hollowed them out, but they were about 1/8 of an inch thick. And even so, still very heavy. All right. Anyway, without further ado, this is, so we're going to go ahead and hit play. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, so I actually made,
So as this gets started, please, if you're on YouTube, type in questions in the chat and we'll answer them as we go.
Yeah, this is kind of going to be a conversation. So we want you guys to ask us questions we can answer while we're talking. And we're kind of just here to show you guys what we've been working on.
Audience participation.
Highly encouraged.
So Zoom people, you can put your questions in the Q&A.
In the Q&A we can answer, and then, or the chat, we can also do that as well. And yeah, YouTube, just go ahead and shout them out in the chat as well. So this is Ryuji's mask. This is Zbrush. For people who are unfamiliar with what this software is, this is Zbrush. It's a digital sculpting program. So it's really meant for creating organic shapes, excellent for making things like masks, helmets, just a really great program because it's more like manipulating clay than it is working in CAD or more engineering based programs or NURBS based modeling, which is like Rhino, which is a completely different style of making. So you can see on the left, I have this reference image that I'm working on, and you'll also notice that I pull a bunch of different reference images. I had a kind of a problem with this particular object because as you'll find for making things based off of video games,
even animation, we run into this all the time across all mediums. It
looks different every single time you look at it on screen. So Ryuji's mask looks very different in rendered scenes. It looks different in the video, in the gameplay. It looks different in the artwork that is illustrated for the game. So you actually kind of just have to pick a look that you want. So I ended up making kind of a composite of a couple different ways the masks look. Also referencing other people who have made the mask in the past, just to check and make sure my work kind of makes sense, which is sometimes hard. I mean, obviously not everything you want to make is gonna have already been made by other people, but it's a good thing just to see how other people have solved problems that arise while you're designing. So you'll see that I'm going to be referencing a bunch of different images throughout the whole process. There's easier ways to pull reference images into ZBrush. I just didn't do it. So you'll see me opening up pictures, analyzing how things are looking, just trying to get the base shape down. So what I did is I brought in just a stock head, not my own head. And the reason I did that is because my head is asymmetrical, as are most heads. And so I wanted to be able to sculpt symmetrically. I wanted to make my job easier. And that's a really cool feature of ZBrush, is that you can model in symmetry. So you only need to technically make half the object, and then the other half will just be there. It's very magical. So you'll see what I've done is I've masked the shape from the head. So that'll give me a rough sense for how it's going to wrap around the face. And then from here, I'm basically going to just reduce all the geometry and topology to make something.
Did it jump?
It didn't jump. I wonder if it, we'll just keep talking. But basically what I did is I reduced the geometry of the object, and you can do that in ZBrush. You basically just throw away a bunch of triangles. And then I started pushing and pulling out the elements of the mask that I needed to. And then also removing the eye holes preemptively. Something you'll notice too in ZBrush is I'm working on a surface. It's not actually a solid object. So it's not printable in the state that it is. It's literally just a plane that I'm basically pushing and pulling. You can think of it as like a sheet. Whereas, when you're 3D printing something, it needs to have, it needs to be like a box. It needs to have all the sides.
Yeah, it's like a piece of paper versus a cube.
Right. Yeah. So when you're 3D printing, it needs to be a cube. It needs to be a three-dimensional shape. So, but what you can see the other side of the surface, and that's because I have it turned on. You'll see this display properties. You'll see it's actually turned on right now. So you can see double, basically means you can see the back side of it, which you normally wouldn't see in ZBrush. ZBrush does a good job of telling you whether or not the thing you're making is a full three-dimensional shape or not. And oftentimes this program is used for rendering assets for video games or illustrations. So you don't necessarily need that three-dimensional aspect. You can work with just surfaces. And that saves a lot of topology, geometry, saves a lot of triangles. So yeah, you can see right here, I'm still just trying to figure out the base shape and what I want it to look like. And I'm only working with let's see, it doesn't say on here how many triangles I'm working in. It's probably just like a couple thousand triangles. So it's a very small, well, it's actually quads right now, but it's, you know, a couple thousand.
So a big thing with making masks, and we've dabbled, this is kind of like the first really intensive mask that you've made. As you were building this, what were you thinking about around fit?
Well, so oftentimes, like, this is going to be made for me, but in the future, we probably want to allow this item to be bought by people who want to cosplay as Ryuji in the future. So for me, I wanted to make this as generic as possible, which is why I picked a generic head. Obviously, you know, when I try on the mask that's fit for me, I can make adjustments to the sort of stock shape to make sure that it could fit most people. And again, I mean, masks are hard. That's why when I'm thinking about what material this is going to be made out of, I'm going to print it in a more flexible plastic. So nylon is ideal for this type of material for printing it in, at least in terms of cost and just wear, the ability to paint it and manipulate it and continue to wear it.
Iteration with this is pretty much inevitable.
I think so. I think it will be. I mean, it hasn't been printed yet. It's actually being printed now. It's coming. It's like Christmas. It's coming. It'll be arriving at my door any day now. I'm very excited. But yeah, I mean, iteration is going to be important for this. If you want to save on cost, an easy way to sort of iterate is to just iterate core sections. So maybe just cut the eye holes out to make sure they will align. Again, 3D scanning, honestly, if you have access to that technology, 3D scanning yourself and then checking the fit digitally is probably the most cost-effective way to prototype things like a mask that you would be wearing on your body. So you can see after working on it for a bit, you can see that, let's see, now what am I doing is, oh yeah, I'm basically I'm trying to make the edges a little less wavy, you can see. So I'm sort of trying to, again, when you start from working from a head, you'll notice your edges are not going to be super clean. And so that's kind of an important consideration as you're working. You want to make sure you're always rotating around your object, looking at it at all angles, because something may look good in one angle and then look terrible in another. And again, this is a Zbrush thing. This is a digital sculpting program style.
It's like if you were sculpting a bust in clay on a platform, you would be circling around it physically, stepping back, stepping in.
Yeah, and they tell you to do that. We both went to art school, and so we both were painters at one point, and that's always something they always tell you to do, is to step back from your paintings and just look at them for a minute and then go back in. So you should never paint from your 3-foot distance. You should always be painting from across the room, down the hall, you know, right in front, get really close to the painting, you know. So the same thing is with digital sculpting. You always want to be continually looking at it from different angles. Another thing too that's interesting about this particular object in this program is that it's uses techniques that are referred to as hard surface sculpting. Usually when people want to make, this is like way back in the day when 3D programs were not as good or they were really difficult to learn, someone would probably make this object in a program like Maya or Cinema 4D, maybe not so much in a CAD program, but a program that can manipulate surfaces. And, you know, it would be made using rigid shapes or rigid vertexes that are moved around, pushed and pulled. But in Zbrush, because it's a sculpting program, it's easy to make organic shapes. It's a little harder to make shapes with rigid planes and mixed in with your organic form. So there's a technique that's referred to as hard surface sculpting. So that basically means you're sculpting surfaces that are very angular, very machined, planar. So, you know, for making things like mechs or, you know, robots or cubic objects, houses, things like that. Automobiles, you know, things that have really sharp edges and clean edges.
Cosplay.
There's tools in Zbrush that will help you along while you're working. So there's very specific brushes. Zbrush uses brushes, kind of like sculpting pens or sculpting what are the sculpting tools? Sculpting objects that help you sculpt. They have the similar kind of terminology within the program.
Speaking of tools, I think it's important to discuss kind of your desk space and how you like to sculpt.
Yes. Oh, you want to talk about like tools, like desk tools?
Yeah, just for a brief moment. So there's people that, use tablets or the way I do things, which in the unconventional way.
Insane. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So I like to, so people often use ZBrush with a tablet. And because it's a digital sculpting program, using a drawing tablet is actually a really natural feeling way to use this program. I actually use a mouse, and I use a mouse with my non-dominant hand, which is crazy, but that's how I learned how to use a computer. So I use a mouse. I also when I started learning ZBrush, I didn't have access to a tablet, and they were very expensive at the time. So I was using a mouse. So you can use ZBrush with anything. You can use ZBrush. Sarah uses it with a trackpad on the computer. So you don't even need to use, and that's insane. That to me is insane.
It's slightly,
but she makes incredible things with it. So, the tools that you don't need a tablet, but they can be helpful for doing specific things.
I can see how I've seen for some people are easily swayed to stay away from 3D because some people think they need all these bells and whistles for their setup, and you really don't. All you need is your computer and the program and an idea. However you want to go about using your mouse or your tablet or whatever you have, it's possible, and that's what's so great about working digitally.
Absolutely.
Is that you don't need a facility with a vent and all these specific things to make it work for you. It could be on your phone. Now you can do things on your phone or your iPad, which we didn't really have when we first started. So I think it's important just to talk about that, because especially when you're talking about space and what other people have, tablets might work for you. They might not work for other people, vice versa. So just try a lot of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what's kind of that's a really important thing. I love using a tablet. I sometimes have to for certain things I'm making, because I need to use my left hand in order to do so. Let's see what I'm doing right now. So I'm adding, Ryuji has some kind of little, bolts or nuts or, on the mask that kind of attach it together, simulate a sort of things that are stitched together. So I'm adding those now with just separate, they're literally just stock cylinders. So they're really easy just to pull in and manipulate. And again, everything's mirrored. So everything that's happening on one side is happening on the other side, which
it's wonderful.
A wonderful perk for this type of software. Another thing too that's kind of interesting about ZBrush as a program in and of itself is that it originally was a painting program. It was a 2.5D simulated painting program, and what that meant is that you can paint, but then you can simulate depth. So you could paint things that look three-dimensional but are really just a two-dimensional flat object or a flat plane. And then as it evolved over time, it kind of became more of a 3D program, and then started doing all this other really fancy stuff. And now you can do all sorts of really cool things with it. You can rig objects for animation. You can do really high resolution renders in different materials, just like any other 3D design program can do.
Yeah, we always like to, when we teach classes on ZBrush locally in Manhattan. And one thing that we always like to remind our students is that the 3D software and the 3D modeling process is an agent through which you can get to where you need to go.
Right.
So 3D printing, especially for cosplay, it doesn't have to be the end game. The print doesn't have to be the final result. We've used 3D interfaces like SolidWorks and ZBrush as well to just conceptualize maybe what we're going to do.
Right.
Or make a mold, make a mold that we print and then pour something into. So you can use this tool as a tool. There's so many different ways you can apply what you know from in the software.
Well, I'm actually, yeah, exactly.
Because like you could make a mold of this in here.
Yeah, I'm actually
I'm gonna
bring us back a little bit because I wanna show you guys that this is actually while we were talking, I thickened the object in ZBrush. So now it's a full 3-dimensional object with thickness. So in terms of understanding thickness within a digital program, it's kind of difficult. One of the things about ZBrush that people hate or dislike, we have gotten used to working with it, is that ZBrush doesn't work in concrete dimensions. It works in
it's beyond dimension.
There's no because traditionally the program was not made for making things for 3D printing. It didn't really incorporate measurement as a tool that people wanted, and so they're starting to change. That's changing, but for now, at least with this object was made probably at like 2 inches. That's kind of how ZBrush default size. So it's about 2.5 inches. So it's really small right now, but basically what helps, and this is what I've done, and it's a weird thing, but you can measure inside ZBrush now, but what I oftentimes do is just have a ruler by my computer.
Always.
I'll scale the mask in the program to be roughly like, or not scale, I'll zoom out so that I can have the mask roughly about the size of my face. And then I'll literally pan around the object to the thickness and then measure it with the ruler and be like, okay, so if my mask is 6 inches wide, how thick is it? And then from there, I can figure out, if it needs to be thicker or not.
So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to bump this a little just so we can see you start to put it on your face.
Yeah, I can do that. So,
but as you do that, let us know if you have any questions.
Well, we can actually keep it going because it's not that much longer because it probably, after this part, I'll put it onto my head. So I'm basically just adding like this fancy kind of, the mask has a bit of a lip on the outer side. So I'm just adding that portion, making it look fancy and fun. Let's see, I wanted to say something else about ZBrush, and now I can't remember what I wanted to say.
There's too much to say about ZBrush.
Well, you were mentioning that the objects, that doesn't need to be the end result. Printing doesn't need to be the end result, of course, and that's always kind of an important thing. But we are talking about printing for cosplay, specifically. Let me see. Oh man, now I'm sad I lost my train of thought. This was a cool thing I wanted to talk about, but that's all right.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, feel free to shout out questions. Let's see. So yeah, I'm still just so right now I'm using a tool that's a masking tool, which again, it's kind of like how you would think about Photoshop or masking in Photoshop or other photo editing programs where, whatever you're masking off is not going to be touched. So this is a really easy way for me to first kind of figure out where the zone is that I want to pull out. And then from there, I'm going to actually use a fairly newer tool in ZBrush, which is it's called ZModeler, and it's actually like a more hard surface tool, which is common when you're doing hard surface sculpting. So I'm literally just going to pull that out, and you'll actually see me do it here with ZModeler. Any questions about ZBrush too, feel free to shout them out. I know I keep saying that word. I'm a ZBrush evangelist. I love this program. It's near and dear to my heart. It can do no wrong, except it doesn't do scale very, very easily. Again, they're changing it. It's changed. It's easier now. And you'll actually see too, we'll talk a little bit about scale when it gets put on my face.
We have a question.
We do have a question.
Is there a free version?
Yes. So ZBrush there's a couple options. You can get a free 30-day trial. Which I would highly recommend, and you can make stuff in it for free for 30 days. It's a full version of the program, so you're not limited by the things you can do in your trial. There is a ZBrush, like a ZBrush Lite, which can do pretty much anything you would want for sculpting in ZBrush, but there's a few features removed for more, I guess what they would say, more advanced users. Again, legacy tools that you may not even ever need. So there's a light version of the program. There's also,
that's about, I think, $200.
That's like I think it's about $200. Again, that was a while ago, so don't quote me on that, but it's fairly affordable as far as 3D programs go. There is
and what you get.
There is a sister program to this one called Sculptress. And they actually ported some of the features from Sculptress into ZBrush, and you'll see Sculptress Pro is like this is really cool feature. But Sculptress is a free program. It never really left alpha development, so it can be buggy at times, but there's a ton of really great resources for learning Sculptress, the program. And then you can take your Sculptress skills and bring it right into ZBrush. So if you want to kind of if you've never tried digital sculpting before and you want to play around with it, download Sculptress and play. And if you fall in love with it, you're like, this is the greatest tool ever. Get really good at it, and then move on to ZBrush. Maybe try the cheaper version, and then you can either do a subscription or buy the program outright. Something really great about Pixelogic, I hope they never change, is that if you buy the program, you are entitled to free. The upgrades to the newer versions are free. So I own this program, which means that I will be able to get the updates for as long as they're free. I will get the newer versions with newer features every year when they have their summit. They have a big old summit where they have artists come on and be like, this is how cool this is. Like, look what this can do.
It's very cool. It's great.
The new thing this year was cloth physics. So you can actually make shirts, like you can make clothing very easily, which is great because this program is primarily used by character designers. So you'll see tons of really incredible work by artists who use it to create characters. And of course, clothing is a huge part of that. So again, it's a really incredible tool. It's very dynamic and I love it. I want other people to try it out and try it out for themselves. Any other questions? We're here for questions. Right now, I'm just adding some really silly kind of details that are on the mask. So it's kind of boring. Let's go to the part where it's on. I'm doing some Booleans. Booleans are fun.
Let's bring their head in. Let's see your head.
Oh, just fixing the teeth up a little bit. I'm almost basically done at this point. I will say, just so you all know, here we go.
There she is.
There she is. Just so you all know, this mask took me about 3 hours to make real time. And so it actually wasn't too long. It took me about a day. You can actually see my head is wider than the stock head that I was modeling off of. So you're going to see me basically just manipulating it, turning off symmetry for a bit so that I can just get this thing on my face. This is a scan that's actually a few years old now. I haven't broken any bones or anything, so my face should be still relatively the same size. But that's something to also think about when you're working with scans of your body, is that if you're working with older scans, you may want to do an updated scan because our bodies change all the time. Or just make it a little bit bigger, so it'll fit.
And speaking of sizing, tolerances are huge for this.
Yes.
So what is a tolerance? Tolerances are, as the material is printing, it can shrink or expand. Right. So even if you make something a certain size, it might not be exactly that when you receive the final piece. Right. So that's always important to keep in mind when you're fitting things to you. You don't want them to fit perfectly. Right. You want to give yourself a little wiggle room.
You want to give yourself plenty of wiggle room, especially too if you're adding foam.
Which we do for most things.
We do for most things. It's if you've worn 3D printed props or armor pieces, it's not comfortable usually. So you want to give yourself some comfort. So foam is a great thing to add to the plastic to make it a little bit better. This mask is going to be printed in nylon, so it's got flexibility to it, which is going to be important when you're wearing it so that it has a little bit of freedom for movement. ABS is also has some flexibility to it, and it's really strong material. So, but yeah, so literally all I'm doing is just pushing and pulling it, rotating it, making sure it fits I'm finding where my nose is. I'm going to have to sort of move, and you'll see I'll start moving the features down a little bit so it fits in, my nose fits a little bit better. And again, this is all like these are all sort of artistic decisions, right? So the mask doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to look good on my face. So those are the decisions that I make to alter the part. So
and that's your kind of stylistic take on it.
That's like a style choice there. All right. So, I think we're pretty much going to wrap up here. So I'm going to stop this. Let's go here to this. And, that was that part. Scan your head. Okay. So, Right now, what we're basically going to do is we're having a giveaway. So we're going to give away the print. So this mask, we're actually going to give away to somebody. Not the one that fits to my head. We'll have one that fits to most heads. And so all you got to do is follow us on Instagram and leave a comment on our Instagram post. We're going to post about the giveaway. You just leave a comment on there
right now,
or send us an email, and we'll enter you in the raffle, and then we'll send the winner a notification on Sunday.
Yeah, so by 5 p.m. tomorrow, if you're interested in winning a 3D printed Ryuji mask, can't guarantee it'll get to you by Halloween.
Yeah,
but definitely by all the conventions in 2021.
Absolutely.
Hopefully. So, yeah, we're super excited to be able to do this. We love doing these giveaways. So we hope that you guys will check us out on all of our socials. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at The Laser Girls. We're also on Etsy at TheLaserGirls.Studio if you want to purchase a cosplay prop from us.
Yep.
And if that's all too confusing, you can go to our website, TheLaserGirls.Studio.com, as
shoot
the
us an
jumping
email
point for all the other places we're at.
All right. Well, this was fun, everyone. Have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yeah, thank you for joining today, and thank you, Maker Faire, for having us.
Yep, this was great. All right.
Bye.
Bye.